This will be the final lesson in the series on life. What are the common features to all cells, and how can a living thing be composed of non-living parts? So first, the universal features of cells on Earth. Cells have a boundary that controls the entry of nutrients and the exit of wastes. Cells have a fluid interior where the chemistry of life occurs. You'll recall most of the mass of a cell is water, and the fluid inside the cell is called cytoplasm. Cells extract energy and resources from the environment to maintain life. Many kinds of cells import molecules as food and energy, as it were, but photosynthetic organisms capture the energy in light. Cells have a team of molecular machines called proteins that do a wide variety of tasks needed to keep the cell alive, and these tasks include processing energy, building the cell's molecular parts, repairing damage, carrying out cell reproduction, etc. Cells have a set of information molecules called DNA that carry the instructions for making the all-important proteins. Proteins are the workers of the cell. Importantly, DNA can duplicate, and that allows for reproduction. And when DNA is duplicated, mistakes occasionally happen. We call them mutations, and that allows for living things to evolve over time, to change. So here's our cartoon bacterium, a simple cell. The nature of life on Earth is cellular. And it is really striking to consider how complex a cell is. A bacterium may make thousands of different kinds of proteins. That would be like a machine having thousands of parts, but the machine is microscopic. So these proteins are little molecular machines, and they have evolved to carry out useful functions. We have learned that cells, one of the characteristics of life is that living things perform metabolism, so cells perform metabolism, and we can categorize those chemical reactions as those involved in extracting energy from the environment and then building important molecules in the cell. And the star of the show of life on Earth are proteins. Proteins are the workers of the cell. They're the little molecular machines that are carrying out important jobs that keep the cell alive. For example, this protein right here is responsible for importing an important food or energy molecule, glucose in this case. We've learned about other proteins that are going to be involved in releasing energy from food, and we learned about this set of proteins on the membrane. We called it the bank, converting the energy of glucose into the energy stored in molecules of ATP. Other proteins are responsible for building important molecules in the cell. And here, this protein here, and there would be many of them around the membrane, are responsible for exporting waste. You've got to remove waste products from the cell, because if waste builds up in the cytoplasm, it interferes with the chemistry of life. Of course, a feature of cells is that they grow. And if you take a look at a picture, in this case up here at the top right here, we notice that the bacteria cells appear to be different lengths. And so this cell here, it has just divided from a parent cell, so it is shorter than this one. This one has grown longer, and in time this one would undergo cell division and reproduce to form two daughter cells. So whenever you see a picture of bacteria cells, you'll notice they have different lengths. There are different stages of growth. Now, we also learned that for cellular life on Earth, cells are microscopic. They have to remain small. And we learned a little bit about why that was. The proteins that produce energy are situated in the membrane of the cell. So energy production is limited by membrane surface area. As a cell grows bigger, membrane surface area does increase, so the cell can produce more energy, but the energy needs of the cell increase faster. So the energy needs of a cell are related to the volume of the cell, and the volume increases faster as the cell grows. So cells have an energy shortage problem. They will be limited in energy production as they get big, and so this is why they must divide and maintain a small size. We have learned a little bit about the fact that cells can produce the very proteins that carry out the chemistry of life. And how do cells know how to produce these proteins? That's the role of DNA. So DNA is going to store the recipes to build proteins. So cells are going to use that information to build new proteins, to replace damaged proteins, to make new proteins for cell growth and reproduction. And the DNA molecule itself can be duplicated, and then that allows for reproduction, so that daughter cells can have a full set of recipes to build all of the proteins the cell needs to make. So this is life on Earth. And this is the simplest life form on Earth, the simplest kind of cell, like a bacterium. We should note that none of the parts that you see in this cartoon diagram, none of them are alive. But it's when all of these parts are working together, the whole entity has the properties characteristic of life. So in other words, a living thing is composed of non-living parts. So when we watch a bacterium, then see, we want to think of these little structures here have all the characteristics on that list. They do metabolism, they grow, they get energy, they respond to the environment, they have adaptations, they're evolving, they reproduce. All of the characteristics of life are present in these cellular structures. But while the whole cell is alive, a cell is composed of non-living parts. Now this tells us something important about life. Life is a chemical process. It's not a thing. A living thing is not made of smaller living things. Living things are made of non-living things interacting in time and space. The flip side is death. Death is the failure of the chemical process. So when we think about all of these molecular parts, the proteins have evolved to perform certain useful functions. And when these proteins can carry out their jobs successfully, the whole entity, the whole cell, is alive. But none of the parts is itself a living thing. So life emerges from functional interactions of non-living molecules. When functional interactions stop, non-living molecules cannot make a living cell, and death is the result.